Captain Marquis.
Ellen,
Oh, how are you?
I'm well.
My fruit and pineapple. I'm obsessed with it. Like, Alex, there's no way.
All right, why don't we get started? Call to order the first budget meeting of 2025 for the 2026 year. Turn it over to our finance manager, Jeff Stone.
Thanks, Mayor. We'll go ahead and get started. Agenda, we will do a brief presentation and then we will start going through the operational budgets by department and see how far we get. Usually we get through general fund and then the CIPs. Hopefully we'll get through those. And then our next meeting is scheduled for next Thursday, 9/18 from 9 to 12. In the past, we've gotten through this in 2. If we need another one, we could schedule another one after that. But right now, budget approval by the council is set, preliminarily set for the October 13th council meeting. So that's where we're at. So we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation on the assumptions and summary. So the budget document is one of the most powerful tools and most powerful and important communication tools reflecting the town council's policy decisions, goals, and priorities. A 50,000 foot view, there are 4 different budgets, but in those 4 different budgets, there's 10 funds inside the town of Superior, which is the general fund, the capital improvements, the new capital improvements 2025, the CTF, open space debt service, trash, class 1 landscape, and the Marshall Fire Recovery. And then we have the interchange district, the urban renewal area, and then the Superior Metropolitan District, which includes the water, sewer, and storm. So in total, there's 15 funds, and those 15 funds total $74 million this year in total budget. Sales tax as well as building and vehicle use tax continue to fund most town operations. Majority of sales tax is generated by 5 businesses. So we always worry about that concentration, but that number's kind of stayed steady and actually dropped a few percentage points over the last, 5 to 10 years with online sales and more retailers coming on board. 2025 sales tax is projected to increase 2% from 2024. Right now, to date, we're right about that budget level, so we'll continue to watch that and make sure we stay in that with the economics and see what goes on.
And I had a meeting with city managers yesterday, and one of the things that came up was sales tax for next year, and everybody's flat as far as projections for next year for sales tax.
And that leads to the next thing. We are projecting to be flat. We've got a couple interesting things going on. We've got that vendor fee cap, or we had. The legislature last year eliminated that. That was a $1,250 cap that affected about 6 businesses, but that went away. So we'll lose 1 to 2% from that. And then the other thing that will be, happening, sometime in 2026 or early 2027 is a new grocery store across the highway in Louisville that'll affect some of our retailers. So we always take that into account. General fund, as we said, majority, so 68% of the sales of the revenue come from sales and use tax, 32% comes from, property tax and other revenues. Excuse me. Again, Colorado municipalities, Superior is no different. Continue to see a stress on sales tax revenue, primarily from an aging population where services aren't taxed. And then competition, as I just talked about with King Soopers opening. Every time there's only a finite amount of, purchases to be made. So when there's a new retailer, that usually comes from somewhere. Property tax rates and revenues, with the change in the Senate Bill 24,233. We saw, some changes this year. Next year we'll have a similar impact. So you'll see a little bit slight decrease in property tax. We've gotten preliminary numbers from the county. I haven't been able to put them in the budget. Looks like we may be able to get, about $100,000 or a little bit more than that, that we could add to revenue in 2026. If we need to, or we could just, let it go into reserve. So we can talk about that when we get into the budgets. Commercial side, again, there will be, that is slowly decreasing, but that will be dropped to 25% of actual value in 2027, and then it's supposed to stay there at that level for that, continuing into the future. So that's kind of where property tax rates are going, hopefully stay.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
Quick request. You guys made a comment about sales tax rates are staying flat everywhere. Can we just do a competitive assessment, Louisville, Lafayette, Superior, what our property tax rates are on the residential side? One of the budget documents kind of looked at the aggregate budgets for Louisville and Lafayette were actually higher than both of them. So I'd just like to understand how our property tax rates compare.
So you're talking mill levies?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Yes, we can get that information.
Thank you.
Yep.
And are you looking for that, Neil, just specific to the town's collected mills or mills assessed for all properties within Superior, regardless of whether those mills are paid to us or other entities?
Good question. I'm actually just thinking about the ones paid directly to the municipalities, how does Superior stack up? Because since we don't control the other ones, I'd like to know how we compare relative to our neighbors. But that's my thought. I mean, I can see, the benefit of seeing the total stack, across all our neighbors as well. I know the issue, of course, is depending on the multiple districts within the community, it varies substantially. So I just was looking at just the Superior piece of it.
Okay.
So we should look at Superior plus the library portion.
Yeah.
Because that's technically still Superior.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So new construction over the 5-year period, usually infill construction, both residential and commercial, is financially positive in some ways to the town, with being higher property values for new homes, limited demand on services, and then it helps town utilities maintain financial self-sufficiency rather than being supported by the general fund as it was in the past. Net new revenues over the 5 years is about $8.4 million, and that's including, building use tax, tap fees, and everything. And then $1.25 million in ongoing revenues in total over those 5-year period. Governmental fee changes that we've got proposed for the year, trash and recycling fee, that will be determined with the provider later this year. Clerk made a change to the mobile vending fee and just included that as part of the business license with a small add-on if they wanted the mobile vending fee. Landscape fee will be determined during the budget review, as we talked about. What we have in there right now is, no fence maintenance, and that is about a 15% rate increase next year, but we can play with those rates like we talked about during that rate study. Yeah, exactly. Utility fee changes, right now, we've got proposed every year water increases of 9, alternating 9 and 7.5%, 7.5% every year in sewer and 5% in storm. Average residential customer impact in 2026 is about $9.
And when we get to the District 1 budget, we can talk about the rates and if you want to increase those or not.
Again, with the utility fee changes, even with our rate increases, we're about 13 to 30%, depending on the municipalities, lower than Erie, Lafayette, and Louisville. Next year, our one-time system development fee connection fees will increase by inflation, and that index is 2.07 for next year. Staffing changes for 2026 that are in the budget is a part-time code enforcement officer, a change from one of the IT techs from part-time to full-time, a communication specialist going from part-time to full-time, a rec coordinator facility programs going from part-time to full-time, and then adding a open space ranger seasonally. And then Matt, I don't know if you want to talk about those other two that aren't in the budget.
When we get to the parks budget, we're going to talk about events, and one of the things that I'd like to talk to you about is possibly adding a full-time position to support events, but we can go through that when we get to the parks budget.
And then we also had a possibility of maybe adding a part-time planning and building based on a possible grant that would fund that for a few years. So we can talk about that when we get to the planning and building department.
And we had, do we have 10 new position requests? We had 10 or 12 new position requests, but because of the budget, we just couldn't support all of those. So these are the ones that we're recommending to the council.
And then out-year staffing changes that are included in the budget is a sheriff deputy for traffic in 2027, and then a regular sheriff deputy in 2029. There are no, town staff, again, because of budget issues. There were requests, and you'll see those when we get into the assumptions on the budget. But to balance the budget and get everything in, these are the ones that have made it in. Operating summary, new and continued programs, and, including the expanded community programs with Downtown Civic Space now coming on board. Capital summary, over $19 million in government capital and SMID projects. A big majority of that is the new funding from the bond proceeds that we got. That'll be, three big projects, really 4 big projects over the next few years, those top ones being Rock Creek Parkway, Indiana, and then the 2 pool renovations. So that's kind of a big chunk. McCaslin pedestrian crossing, of course, continued work with tree enhancements and care. Another one out of SMID is 80% grant funded for the Marshall and McCaslin bike, ped, and signal improvements. And then the Public Works, the finishing up of the Public Works and Parks Maintenance and Operations building. Debt summary, again, in 2025, we'll pay about $7.9 million in principal. A big portion of that is the SMD1 balloon payment that we've, known was coming. So that is a big reason that number is as high as it is in 2025. Again, the end of 2025, debt balance will be about $33.1 million. That does include the new debt issue of $16.9 million for that 2025 CIP. By 2026, 2 obligations will be paid off in full. Again, the SMD1 debt in 2025, and then the Open Space 2015 series will be paid off in 2026. And then that money will then go to that second 2020 Open Space series that, so it's not freeing up open space money, that'll go to that second set of debt.
Hey, Jeff, we might be talking about this later, and if not, that's fine too, but from a collateral perspective on that debt, we don't have any debt on the civic space, correct?
We do not, but we do not own the civic space. We just have a condo plat, if I'm saying that right, Martin.
Yeah, airspace.
So we don't actually own that
So it
property.
could be collateralized.
It can be collateralized.
Okay.
Good question. And then the last piece here is just the debt summary for the last, 20 years, showing that we were paying it down, and then we've added that new debt in for that 2025 CIP. So we will now have 4 outstanding debt issues at the end of the year, being open space, the community center, the sewer debt, and the new 2025 CIP debt.
And one of the reasons it was so high at one time, up to close to $70 million was because that's when we purchased our water rights for the town, so.
That's what we took over from, when we took over the SMD1 Metro District. Yep. So that is the budget summary. And so now we'll kind of go into other assumptions that most of these we've covered, unless you guys have any other questions. Again, we talked about sales tax, funding a lot and being flat next year. Vehicle and gas tax revenues, we're estimating to be about 1.6 next year. New construction, we've talked about that. You can see the units there, 50 left in downtown Superior. The affordable housing in Discovery Office, finishing up Superior Shores, some infill in Original Town, and then commercial. The food hall next year, and then the two office buildings, one in 27 and one in 28 is what we have them projected at as of now. So that is the construction that makes up those one-time revenues that we talked about. Property values and revaluations we've talked about, mill levies are staying the same. Right now we've got SMID going up by $0.5 mil, depending on where these valuations come in. We may be able to drop that back down, but that's just one of those to make sure we're paying for the capital projects and stuff that are left. It'll be coming on there. Again, government fee schedule changes we talked about, the utility fees we've talked about. And then there, inflation, we're looking at, hopefully getting back to a normal 3%. We've got a salary increase at 3% for a pool. And then there are the staffing changes over, that were in the staffing plan that were in the budget, and the ones that are highlighted bold are the ones that have made it into the 2026 budget. So those are the assumptions. So unless you got questions, we'll start into the big fun spreadsheet with general fund revenues. You will see some highlights in here, yellow highlights that Valerie went in yesterday and updated all the year-to-date numbers, and anything that was the estimates that were lower, both on the revenue and expense side, she went ahead and changed. And then we updated the estimate to kind of get us a better idea of where we think we're going to be at the end of the year. We had the first one being building use that was there. The payment came in for the hotel. So we were able to see that, and, some of those fees are actually higher than we had estimated on valuations and meter sizes. So you'll see that in here, and then water, sewer, and storm. So again, on this, property tax, like I said, next year we're showing it up just slightly over 2026, but really down from what we're estimating. We'll continue to watch that. We may be able to, like I said, squeak a little bit more money out of there if we want to, based on those valuations. Sales tax, again, we've already talked about. We'll just continue to watch it and see what goes there. Those are kind of the big taxes on there. Licenses and permits, the big one there, of course, is the permit and plan check review fees. And as you can see, that along with building use up top, after those two office buildings in 27 and 28, that really starts to drop off to really kind of where we were back before the town center started with remodels and things like that. No really new development. So that's kind of where those numbers will drop off to.
Jeff, I know we're going to have a discussion in a bit about the system development fees, those being one time, and how we need to be ahead of that a little bit. For the permitting fees, I'm assuming we budgeted for the fact that those are going to start to get lower as well for the budget that those
Correct.
go
So
to.
you will see that in line 23 building use and line 35 building permits and plan review fees we're at millions of dollars, and you can see there in 29 and 30, we're, 110 and then 70 in building use. So we're definitely planning that those are gonna really start dropping off.
Okay, and that's not us marching toward a cliff like we are with the system development fees, that's,
I mean,
Plan for
it
it,
is,
expense
it's just
out
gonna, other revenues are gonna have to pick it up, and kind of figure out how that's gonna play out.
The other thing that comes into play here is since we contract out inspection services, those costs go down as well.
oh, good, okay,
Good point, thanks, Matt.
perfect, thank you.
So again, license permits, not a lot to talk about there other than, building permit and plan review fees that are, after development slows down, in 29 and 30, they go down. But as Matt just mentioned, so will the expense side of that. Charges for services, pretty much, status quo, except for the lodging fee coming back online in 2027 with hopefully the new hotel being open, and hopefully that's a little bit late, but we'll see how that plays out. Rec program fees, nothing, drastically changing there. Court fines and fees, you'll see kind of, we're higher right now at 141. We had some extra patrols earlier in the year and kind of end of last year with the extra duty, and those kind of came in, will kind of flatten out, and that's kind of where we think we'll be. You'll see it bumps in 2027 when we add that new deputy. Not saying that new deputy's, going to be raking in the money. It's just one of those, we should see a little bit of a bump, but that's why you don't see a huge impact there. And then interest earnings down below, as the Fed seem to be ready to cut rates, we've lowered those, and then as we spend money, that interest income we have will get lower as well. But the main reason those are dropping is because of interest rates. So that's the general fund revenues, unless you have any questions. All right, then we'll go ahead and get started with general fund expenses. Each department will come up and kind of hit their highlights if they. Do you want to touch legislative?
We can turn the lights out. No, it's fine. It's fine.
I can turn up the.
Just a little bit if you want.
Sorry.
Okay.
That's not very sustainable.
I told Jeff this, I am a bad environmentalist. That helps to spread everything out on the kitchen table.
On the legislative side, things are pretty much status quo in this fund. No changes as far as compensation goes. The special funds, I forget, what are the special funds again for the council? You highlight those, Valerie? Oh, yeah, these are our contributions to Meals on Wheels, Sister Carmen, those organizations. We still have money in here for lobbying, just in case there's a special issue that comes up. We like to keep at least some money in there. Plus, we do the DC lobbying trip with the US 36 group, so. But otherwise, pretty status quo in this fund. Any questions? Okay, judicial.
Judicial. Shay, yeah, I don't think there's many changes at all in this one. For 2026, we had a little bit of an adjustment in the salary, and that's why you see kind of a drop in, from the 2025 budget to the 2025 estimate in 2026 budget. Some of that money got allocated, a little bit of a different split into the clerk. So that's why you'll see kind of an offset of a decrease here and an increase in the clerk salaries.
Because some of the salary goes to the town clerk. salary as well. Court clerk and town clerk are shared positions, so there's a split in salary there. And then we did have some adjustments, I think increases for the judge's salary and the prosecutor as well, so.
Clerk, again, other than that change, the only other real change is we moved all archiving into this budget, and so that's why you'll see that line, that was kind of zero last year. We've kind of moved the other budgets into here so that it's kind of all in one place.
And then we have our coordinated election next year with the county, so we have cost contribution to that election as well.
That's it for clerk.
Admin, got the new position for code enforcement, part-time if the council allows that. We continue to, let's see, what else was it?
Hey, Matt, before you leave the conversation on the code enforcement,
Yeah.
some of the complaints from folks on the existing code enforcement is after-hours support. That the code enforcement works from 9 to 5 and, at 6 p.m., there's no one to sort of enforce the code. Is there some thought in how to balance that with this new person? Working, a different schedule or something that allows us to sort of do the enforcement after hours?
Yeah, that's the hope here, is that it'll cover vacations, sick, but then also after hours, whether it's weekends or nights, and if somebody's got to come out and do follow-up and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it'll be helpful in those areas as well.
Okay, and I know that our sheriff does some of that code enforcement in the after hours. I don't know if this takes some workload off of them, or is it just sort of, net additive then?
We have a lot of complaints that we get for code enforcement, so it's just gonna help with those additional.
Okay.
That additional workload that we have.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I had a question about the town clerk position. So 2030 is the expectation for part-timer, or like that's the goal, is to bring on staff then. So we have a big election year coming next year. Is there any thought to bringing somebody on to support sooner than 2030, or?
No. Since it's a coordinated election, I think, typically those years are manageable for our staff, so.
Okay. And I don't really know what the impacts are as far as the role goes, but when Sundance comes, and we're just going to expect a lot more increase on everybody when that happens, is a town clerk going to be impacted? Like, is 2030 too far away to bring?
I mean, it's something we look
Somebody
at
in?
every year as
Okay.
far as what our workload we think is going to be and what positions we might need. So it's something we'll have a conversation for sure about with Shannon and
Okay.
Kirsten. So we still have the chamber support in here at the levels they were last year. Seems to be a good partnership with the chamber. So and then sustainability. We have programs listed there that are covered under that. I don't, if you have any questions about those, Alexis is here. But otherwise, those are kind of the highlights of the admin budget. The Economic Development Program, we had additional funds in here for cash grants to businesses, another 200,000, but because the budget was so tight, we took that out. We still have 100,000 in here for cash grants, but we reduced it from 300,000, which was originally proposed. But the recommendation, I think, Alan and myself feel like is it's better to do performance-based incentives where they get rebated their sales tax over a certain number of years to reach a certain amount. It's less stress on the town, but it still provides support to the business, so.
Okay. Finance, really no changes there. We did make a change that we'll see how it plays out. We're gonna leave it budgeted this way, but the part-time AP, accounting technician is actually now doing that job as well as covering the front a little bit. So she picked up a few hours and then as well as the ones that's up there. So if that plays out, the 2027 budget, we may change and get the allocations back to being right. But as of now, we've got it set up this way. So that's kind of where we're at there. That's really about the only change. And then, auditing services, some of this is also in the utilities as well. I just got off the phone with the auditor this morning. They're proposing a 4% rate increase, which I think is very fair. And that fee will then depend on how many federal grants we have on the additional amount, because each one of those grants that, is part of that single audit is an additional fee because of all the, information they have to go through to make sure it's right. So that could change year to year depending on how many federal grants we have.
Yeah, and Brooke and our staff have been pretty aggressive in going after grants and getting grants, so, which is a good thing, but it comes with costs as well.
That's it for finance.
Kevin, you want to come up and talk about communications?
Everybody, thanks for all your support with our comms team. Really proud of that group and their collaboration with all of our departments in getting great communication out to the public. The biggest change you'll see here is that we're asking for a part-time position to go full-time. When we first requested this position at the staff level, it was completely nixed. And so we went back to the drawing board and were able to reallocate some money. And we were able to reallocate some money from our existing budget from professional services into that position to make it work. So we're just basically asking to reallocate some funds that we were paying to contractors to bring some of our graphic arts in-house, which will hopefully give us a really better experience and a streamlined experience to give that service to our staff. Especially for a publication like Hello Superior, we are way ahead of the game. We're asking for things right now for a January edition. Having somebody in-house will help us to streamline that and cut those timelines. So hoping that will give the whole department a greater level of excellence.
I've got a couple of questions. I don't know if it's who it's for, but since this is my first budget go around, this may sound like a really basic question, but so as a philosophy or as an approach, we are able to take non-personnel related expenses, reduce them and move them into personnel budgets?
That's how this position was kind of, figured out to make it fit into the budget of, talking to Matt and Kevin of, hey, if we bring this in-house, we can reduce some of these other costs and kind of be a net zero game for the town and hopefully get better use out of that money.
And is that a common practice the town uses to try to offset expenses to cover staff costs?
Yeah, it's something we always look at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. And then the second question, Kevin, I know your team was very busy at the beginning of the year with the website update, and I see there's a little bit of a drop in budget between 25 and 26, and are you anticipating any additional website overhauls or updates? Are we done at this point?
No, I mean, there's always room for improvement, and we're always looking for ways to tweak and change. The biggest thing that we're looking into right now is how does the community center and the civic space now communicate through our website. We're looking at a redevelopment of our Parks and Rec pages within our current website. That doesn't cost extra money. That'll just be work that our staff incurs.
Great, thank you.
Can I just expand on Councilmember Foster's question about, is it typically something that we do as a town? Is it pretty typical in any municipality?
Yeah, for the most part.
Budgeting, okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Has nothing to do with our age.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So for legal services, for the town attorney, there's a slight increase. I think they're going to propose a request an increase this year for next year, I believe is what Nick had indicated to me. And then you'll see for special counsel, we've dropped that from the current estimate of, for 2025, we dropped it down to 100,000. With the thought that some of the litigation that we're currently involved in will start to either end or drop as far as costs from our attorneys. Thoughts on that?
So we budgeted 750 for 2025, and year to date, we've spent 200, and the reason for that delta is because the case was dismissed, we took it up on appeal. So we budgeted that 750, and that's before the split with Boulder County, or is that, right, that's just our share?
That's
Right.
just our share. There's offsetting revenue.
That's the full cost.
Yeah.
And then there's offsetting revenue
Okay,
for
yeah.
50%
So-
on the revenue side.
So that 750,000 was budgeted assuming that there was going to be discovery and going to trial. So we're going up on appeal. In the event that we get a favorable decision on appeal, then the cases are going to come back down. And basically the work that we budgeted for this year that wasn't incurred will be incurred.
Okay.
So I think it would be prudent to budget for what we were planning on spending this year that we didn't spend. And then in the event that the decision gets affirmed and there's nothing further to do, then we just don't have that money to spend. But at least we're prepared to budget for that expenditure, because for me, like, this looks like it's, I mean, it's a timing issue potentially, right? That just like
Yeah.
wasn't incurred in this year
Right.
and maybe incurred in 26 or 27, frankly.
Okay.
So I would bump that back up by 500 grand.
Okay. We'll need to go back through the budget and make some adjustments in other areas, but,
Yeah.
and we will
Likely,
we'll
like,
have
I mean,
offsetting revenue.
recognizing how slow just the judicial process is, you know, I don't think that we would actually have a decision before summer of 26.
Okay,
And then if it got remanded, like, the actual work
right,
wouldn't start until fall,
okay.
almost winter. So really, it's going to be,
So we should have some,
we'd have some cushion and some buffer, and it would be something that, like, I think would really be more of a very late 26, more likely 27 problem.
so what we can do is put revenue or expenditures in 26 and 27, which will
Yes.
help as well.
So what do you want?
So I would bump it up by 500 for 26. Well, basically, like, the delta between what we have spent this year versus what we budgeted, just take that and put it into next year.
500 for
And then,
26.
you know, maybe bump 27 up by, I don't know, 100 or 200 for now.
Okay. And we'll have to go back and add revenue for those 2 years, since we're splitting with the county.
Right.
So we'll do that.
So, Mayor, just so I'm clear, since we've got 180 listed in 2027, and you're saying bump it up by 200, so we'd be looking at 380 as
Yeah, maybe,
potential expense.
Maybe bump it up to 280 or something.
Okay.
Recognizing that all of this is subject to whatever happens on appeal.
So just so I'm clear, I understand. So what Valerie's done is on the special counsel, she's taken next year to 500 and added 200 for 27. Is that how you want it shown? And then we'll go back and add the revenue?
Yeah, why don't you add 500 for 26 and add 100 for 27.
Okay, so 100 for 27. Okay. Dave?
Yep.
Afternoon. So for the sheriff's office, I know we had talked initially that we were looking to add a deputy for 2026. Some staffing challenges and some retirements that were kind of a surprise, kind of put a damper on that. So what we are asking for is an increase of 25,000 in the directed patrol. The main purpose of that deputy in 2026 was to really focus on traffic, and figured let's take a little bit more money, throw it at our directed patrols for extra duty for people to come in and do traffic. So that's why that's an increase. And then we're hoping by 2027 back to a good staffing model where we'll be looking for a second deputy just for the traffic. Of course, at that point, it gets rid of the directed enforcement line item, so it kind of offsets some of the cost of that. Our pretty much biggest increase this year is just the operating expenses, inflation and all that. We're up about 5.4% from last year. So it's definitely increased a fair amount, but that's where our main increase is coming from. That's about the highlights.
A question for you with the flock cameras, is that for 26 and the out years, is that purchasing new flock cameras or is that some sort of service maintenance fee that we
Yeah,
pay?
service maintenance fee
Okay.
increase.
Okay, thanks. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Renee?
Good afternoon. I don't know how these things normally go, but changes from last year or from this year to next year are a slight decrease in our salaries, just because we have newer, younger staff at every level, including myself. And then in 2025, we moved the GIS into planning and building. This year, we're moving GIS to a cloud-based system, and then that process is going to be completed this year, and then next year and the following year, we'll start seeing like a standard cost every year moving forward. Maybe it'll go up, maybe it won't, depending on, what the services, what their cost increases are, but that's probably the biggest change to the budget. Everything else is mostly the same. Our inspection services are going down based on building the slow in development. And otherwise, everything else we kind of held steady with for the
Hey Renee, can I ask a quick question about Safe Build? I think this is the end of, year 3 with Safe Build or year 4. Are we going to continue with them? Are we going to revise the agreement, go out to bid? Because I know when we hired them in November 21, we went through the whole RFP and there's 3 or 4 different firms. So it was, October 21 when we hired them. So we're well past 4 years now.
Yeah, they started at the beginning of 2022. So yeah, we are running up on our renewal with them.
Their first day was the Marshall Fire response.
Oh, I am. That's my anchor point for remembering when we went through this process.
We've had some discussions about that. We haven't, Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's something that we'll talk about at the end of this year and beginning of next year, and have a recommendation on whether we want to bid it out or stay with them, or even possibly bring in-house inspection services, so.
So let me make sure. So for 26, we're going to assume we're keeping Safe Built. So we'll go 4 years on the agreement.
Right, correct.
The end of 26, we'll evaluate, exactly what you said. So really, there wouldn't be any change until January 27 at the earliest.
Correct, yep.
Okay. And they haven't suggested any rate or fee increases for their services. We're still doing the straight 55% contractual split.
It's 53, but yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you. Leslie?
Afternoon, everybody. I'm gonna just do the same as Renee, go through, hit any changes from last year to this year, and then entertain any questions you may have. In the salary area, you'll see some increases reflective of that part-time recreation coordinator coming online in 2026, as well as part-time salaries, looking at civic space. We had budgeted only half a year for 2025, so you'll see that increase in 2026. There's some salaries that had some market adjustments as well, so that accounts for some of that increase. Probably our biggest area to discuss is community projects and programs. That's where our event budget lands for the most part. You'll see an increase there. That is due to just an increase in the number of events we're doing. We are making an extended effort these days on zero waste, so we have contracted that service out, and that's really worked extremely well. We've also contracted out assistance for cleanup through our landscape vendor Vargas for some of those events. And again, I think that really reflects on the quality of our events, and you don't see a lot of trash hanging around. We don't get a lot of bees or anything like that because they're really good about removing that in a timely manner. Also, the addition of the civic space in the plaza, doing additional events and activating that space. We have a little bit of extra money in there for a potential larger event for the Marshall Fire. As that date rolls back around to see how we're gonna commemorate that.
Yes, the 5-year anniversary.
5-year anniversary for that. And then we're also looking at upgrading our security for events in downtown with some of those meridian barriers, which are currently the standard for safety with larger events like that when you're closing streets down. So that's the biggest area of increase. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that one.
I don't have any questions about the budget ask, but I appreciate everything that we're doing for downtown and activating the space and all that. It would be helpful for me just, and this doesn't need to happen anytime, as an emergency or anything like that, but I'd love to have just a quantification of the amount that the town is spending on events, on security, on programming, on taking over the splash pad, basically like our separate and distinct investment in downtown, mainly as a point of comparison to the developer, like the investment in the signs that we're going to be doing, and just kind of to show that the town has skin in the game and encouraging businesses to come on Main Street and open up shops. It would be helpful to just kind of show all the incentives that we've given, all of the sales tax rebates that we're giving, all of the infrastructure improvements, signage, the build out of the civic space, just to show like what the town is doing to
Our
make
investment,
downtown
yeah, okay.
a success.
Yeah, we can put that together.
Can you just make that bigger? I
That
can't-
note?
The little note, like, I can't read it.
And I can send that out to you all if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of Michaela's tally of how she,
It's helpful.
yes.
Like, it's nice to see that breakdown. It's really nice.
And then Leslie, the only question I have for you is, thinking about the volume and number of events that have expanded, has your team taken a step back? I know it's tough to do during event season, but taking a step back and looking at, okay, these are the events where these are really popular, a lot of people, high value, and these are the handful of events that maybe we're putting in a whole bunch of staff time and there just isn't a great return. And if you've done that analysis, is that reflective in this budget of where you maybe want to recommend cutting back on events?
It's not necessarily reflected in this budget. We are gonna, Michaela will be there Monday at the work session to talk about events, and I think she has some recommendations on events that we can dial back a little bit, and looking at events that kind of impact each other. So we get events that are too similar in nature and too close together on the calendar. They really have a negative impact on each other. So she will go over that, and there may be some shifting. I'm not sure if we can decrease the budget, but we might be able to shift some of those resources around, especially if we want to pick up any new items related to Sundance or other things that might come down the road. So.
Yeah, for me, it's just making sure that your team has capacity and room to breathe in between and around events, given that it takes a lot to put these things on. And you're right, Sundance is around the corner. That's going to be a major lift probably through the holiday season, which a lot of folks take time off. So I want to make sure you've got
Yeah.
capacity
And
to do that.
Matt mentioned the additional ask for a position that is also not in the budget currently for an additional full-time. We're still having a hard time trying to balance work time and not accumulate a whole lot of extra hours on the side for these folks. It's not fair or healthy for them in the long run. So appreciate consideration on that.
Yeah, I'm looking at the farmers markets. It looks like we're doing a whole lot more next year than we did this year, and I know that's going to be a heavy lift, so this is probably a Michaela discussion for our work session, but I would very much like to have us find something in the budget to make a staff member, an additional staff member for that team available by next year so that they have time off and that they can achieve those goals without being overworked.
Great.
I have it's maybe more of an administrative question. I feel like I've asked you this before, and I think the answer is yes, but when you have events, I know, like, I come from a military world, and it's very much debrief centered, like how, reviewing how it went, what we need to improve for next time, and it's part of it's built into the process. But the time to do that is often the hardest part. But I think you guys, you have some mechanism for that after you have events.
We do, both internally and with all our partners and vendors as well, Rotary, the Chamber, getting feedback from all those folks, kind of doing the hot wash at the end of the events for those major events. And it's helpful. That's why, personally, I think they improve every year a little bit because we do take that into consideration in our planning.
I'm curious too, just that there's a mechanism for if the entire group that is involved in an event does the hot wash and the results are everybody hated it and everyone's miserable and we never want to do this again, except how do we get informed about that? And so I just want to make sure that there's lanes for communicating that kind of stuff, because there should be like a critical button for some things, right? Like whatever that is. I don't know what it is, but I think we'll be talking more about that later with just feedback and stuff from staff. But I'm very concerned about the workload now and then the addition of more things that are going to be coming in these like peaks every 2 years now when Sundance comes. I feel underprepared for that. And I don't want you guys to get hit with like a tsunami, because it's what it's probably going to feel like. So.
No, and I appreciate that. I think it's a great idea to put in a regular mechanism for reporting back to council on that. I mean, I don't think anybody like really hates it or says it's the worst thing ever. We all come off of those events a little bit on a high. It's a great connection to the community and kind of that feel good, environment. But it does impact your workload for the next, couple of weeks. And it's a good point that Sundance will be cyclical, and maybe we can have other events that are as well, maybe to balance that off. So it's a good point. You also see some movement in some of our landscape utilities and landscape costs that's reflective of the movement of the parks that were originally budgeted to come out of general fund that are now going to be in class 1 landscape. So that includes Asti, Grasso, Children's, the full community park and the full Autry Park. So.
It also, correct me if I'm wrong, includes the items we took out of class 1, a few years ago and put it back.
Correct. Yep. So right sizing class 1 landscape. So you'll see some of those movements further down, the water costs, electric costs, and then the landscape costs that are reflected here as deductions. And you'll see those as an add in the class 1 when we get to that. Building maintenance, we'll see some increase there. We have a new line for the civic space added on there. And that's a lot of janitorial, waste removal, window cleaning, all those good things that we have to do to keep our buildings up and running. There's a small increase for the Plaza Fountain in downtown. We're looking at about 120 days of operation right now. That may need to be adjusted in the future, but that pretty much covers our summer time period. We're going to try and make it through the Oktoberfest or the Fall Fest date without having a hard freeze where we have to shut it down. So that's our goal right now. And I believe those are the biggest items that I wanted to highlight, changes from 25 to 26, if anybody has any additional questions.
One last question. Where does, in both the revenue and the expense, where does those expenses and revenues related to disc golf show up in the budget? The disc golf tournament?
It'll come in as recreational fees, I believe, under rentals.
And the expense that's listed, would that be other fees and charges or recreation program expenses?
The expense for disc golf is mostly just waste removal and some restroom cleaning.
Okay,
Really
so
all
from
we
the staff time.
have. It's mostly, staff time. And actually, I think Michaela is going to provide a breakdown of that on Monday as well, if you have specific questions.
Great, thank you.
Can I just ask a question not related to Leslie,
Yeah.
more related to my bad eyesight?
Yeah.
Is the focus off on the projector? Because it feels really blurry. I don't know if it's my eyes are going or.
I thought it was me. I had Jeff just send me the spreadsheet because I thought it was a Zoom issue.
It just seems super blurry. And typically, I don't wear glasses. Maybe it's time, but I'm struggling with seeing the numbers on the big screen. And I don't know if maybe the projector lens
I'll have it.
is dirty or something,
Yeah,
or
I'm not sure. I'll have it checked
Yeah.
though by staff.
I have a question on that as well. Like, do we need, I don't need to see some of those columns when we're looking at this.
Oh, the previous years?
So like, it might be helpful to just,
I'm like, previous 2 years is fine.
yeah. So that, I don't know if that helps enable you
Help us increase the,
to put it all.
It's not going to change the height of those rows, though. Because that's the thing that causes the size issue, is
Right.
the row height, not the column width.
is that better?
That's better.
Okay. Thanks, Valerie. Thank you, Leslie. Brandon?
I can see it now.
And I thought 2025 was the Brandon show.
We are all getting older. Good afternoon, Council. Going over the 2026 budget, I'll just highlight a few items. I think overall our increase was about 18,000, which reflects about a 0.6% increase in public works compared to 2025's budget. So most line items were just inflationary increases. The biggest percentage change was town-owned streetlights. We increased that due to additional streetlights and aging streetlights in downtown Superior. We're also now subcontracting out locates for streetlights. So if we get work in downtown Superior, we get someone to come locate those electrical lines because our staff aren't used to doing that. Snow removal remains our biggest line item outside of staffing. That contract had a 2.2% increase, which was approved by council, I think 2 meetings ago, for the 25-26 season. Those costs vary a lot each year depending on the amount of snow we get, but we have seen quite a bit of a reduction over compared to the last 4 years. Signage and striping, we proposed more of a linear budget for that line item. We used to have low years and high years because we would do a lot of striping in a single year. We're now trying to level that out more and do more consistent striping annually to keep the road striping refreshed. Council approved a contract and they'll be starting striping next week for some of the major streets in town. We do our own striping of residential streets throughout town with our own crews. Happy to answer any questions, but not a lot has changed from 2025, if there are any.
Hey, Brandon, with the new building coming online, sort of in 26, are you expecting some of the operating costs going down, in terms of, staff inefficiencies with the multiple buildings, heating, electrical, all the other stuff with multiple buildings and so on?
That's a good question. We haven't done a deep evaluation on what that will look like. Obviously, it depends on how we reuse the fire building in original town or the old fire station in original town. We will have more square footage, so heating and cooling costs could increase, even though we'll be a more efficient facility. The 2 existing buildings we use, we're going to be refurbishing those, so they won't be office space, but they will be storage space, so there'll be some cost savings there from heating and cooling costs. But we could definitely look into that. I mean, overall, I don't expect a large increase or decrease, but that's a good question.
Yeah, and I think we kind of put on hold what we were going to do with the old firehouse. I don't know when we're going to talk about that, but it'd be good to kind of have an idea, in advance of the new building opening. So, but otherwise, no other questions from me. Thanks.
One question that I have just related to staffing levels, just looking at, so you've got the part-time salary increase for 2026, and then our overtime amounts, this year, more than budget. We've got a decent chunk for 2026. So just question, I know it's really hard to predict when you're going to need overtime, but rather than paying overtime and additional part-time salaries, does an actual full-time employee help alleviate that issue?
It's a good question. So we are fully staffed, and we have been like that for our field crews for some time now, which is great because we did have a lot of turnover in those positions years ago. So we have consistent staff levels. So I'm really excited about that. The vast majority of our overtime is after hours and weekend work. So it's usually call outs, not that they're doing a project and they have to stay late. The exceptions are when we do have main breaks, they'll work until the job's done. And in those cases, as another staff member doesn't really help because most of our, I think all of our overtime is associated with call-outs or emergency repairs. Otherwise, Ed does a great job maintaining their hours. Then the question becomes, can we do more preventative maintenance that would prevent that? And I don't think so. I mean, the biggest issue we have with our call-outs is water main breaks, which is associated with our corrosive soils. And those ductile iron pipes just weren't properly installed years ago, and they're just failing eventually. And there's nothing really we can do to prevent that, except repair them the right way when we do. So in short, I don't think it would be reduced. Overtime is something that we are looking at, and it's mainly Ed, our main lead guy, that does most of the call-outs, and that's something we continue to try to work with him on.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are they, sorry.
Go ahead.
On that overtime topic, are they generally good with the overtime hour? Like, there's a fine line of like, we need another person / I would like to keep these hours.
Yeah.
And so I just want to make sure that they're
Yeah,
happy.
a lot of it, we have a lot of new folks on that crew, so Ed's bringing them up to speed, and he's getting them on. So we have someone on call every night, every week, and he's getting those inexperienced staff members more experienced so they can be on call, which will reduce his overtime and other staff's overtime. He also tries to be, Ed loves to work, and he also tries not to burn out the crews. So he likes to limit their overtime so that they stay happy and engaged in coming out. So there's a fine line there.
And is it safe to presume that these are hourly employees? And if they are, is there a scenario where converting them to exempt would help with this?
They are all non-exempt employees. That's something I have to talk to HR about because I think there's laws and rules and regs.
Rules and regs that would, I think,
Define.
prevent us from moving them to a salaried position.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Non-departmental, we've got our holiday lighting in here. Let's see, memberships is just miscellaneous memberships that we have. No huge increases from year over year in this budget.
The one I'll bring up is property casualty insurance, with us adding more properties. And, as everybody knows, insurance rates are going up. I'm getting the renewal right now to see where we're at. This will be the 4th year, so my plan is right now not to bid that out unless it comes in really high. There's a lot of companies that don't combine services like we have now with Travelers. And CIRSA doesn't work with a broker, so Valerie and I'd have to do all that lift to get that information in. So if we need to, we can do that this year. But plan is to do that next year unless the rate comes in really high. And I verified with our broker that even if it does, and we decide, hey, let's go look for somebody else, we can change it at any time. So whether that would be, the only other way would be to do it is piece out each piece to different insurance companies, which would be, hard administratively. But that is something we definitely are looking into to see what's the best bang for the town buck.
Jeff, with a town our size, are there any advantages to being self-insured, or is it just easier to sort of farm this out?
It's easier to farm it out because
Okay.
I think of the Marshall Fire and go, we would have been in trouble.
Okay.
So.
All right, thanks.
I have a question. It's about insurance, but like for the staff, for employees. In terms of the percentages that you're estimating, there's just a lot of concerns about all of those things going up. So the percentage that you've increased it by, is that typical or is it larger than usual? Or are we concerned about things like health insurance and stuff being a higher cost because of the loss of Medicaid, like all the impacts that are going to come from the federal level? Is it pretty typical, or are we looking at like a higher amount because of concerns about that?
This year's budget the 2026 budget, we've got a 10% rating or increase for health insurance. And then I think it's 6 for dental. Dental and vision are very small, but yeah, we bumped it to 10 for insurance And then Nadine's supposed to get that here with the renewal here in September or early October to kind of get that way. But we did increase it this year to 10% on our estimate.
And a few years ago, geez, I don't know how many years it's been, but we became members of the county health pool. Because we were so small, it was tough for us to get good rates for health, dental, and vision for our employees. So we joined the county health pool, which is a large organization, and they're able to leverage that to get better rates. So it's helped us out quite a bit over the years, keeping our rates down.
Yep. Some of these other ones, as we go through, it's the debt payments for the community center, as well as the reimbursements with the building use and permit plan check fees for downtown Superior. The Louisville revenue share will depend on how much, we get in sales tax in those areas. And then the system development fee rebates are based on, agreements in development. And then the, continuing of the rebate of use tax and permit and plan check fees for Marshall Fire rebuilds of original owners. The one thing we wanted to bring up, the transfer, this is what gets transferred to the CIP fund for kind of excess funds in the general fund that help fund CIP projects. As the costs continue to go up in the general fund and revenue is strained, as you can see, we're definitely not moving nearly as much, and in 2030, we're planning not to move any. So that's going to be definitely a change that we need to have a discussion about.
Yeah, it's a policy discussion for the council. Do we want to continue to transfer money out of the general fund to help fund CIP projects? Or do we want to just get to a point where we're doing CIP projects based on the revenue that's coming in from the tax specifically for those projects? So something to think about. We've got money in there over the next 4 years, but it's a policy decision for the council. What's the sales tax rate for CIP? Do you know off the top of your head?
0.3%.
0.3, yeah, 0.3%.
And Jeff, I know we've been trying to rebuild reserves after the Marshall Fire. What line item is that? A little further down.
That is right there on line 309.
Okay.
So, when we did this, what you guys have for the supplemental budget, we were at 40% with some of those changes that we made with estimates with those revenues coming in 2025. That has adjusted that. We'll look at this when we add that event position, make sure that and the legal fees, make sure we include the revenue and see where we're at there. Looking at this, it looks like we'll be close in 26, but when you get to those out years, when you add salary increases for that position, I have a feeling we're going to be below that 40%. So it's one of those of, is the council okay with that, or do we need to find, new revenues or, reduction in expenses somewhere?
Just getting back to, Matt, your comment about the transfers from the general fund on CIP projects, I think given kind of the list that has been circulated previously about just the outstanding CIP items, my personal opinion is, with the recent ballot measure, that was to try to jumpstart and accelerate an already substantial list of outstanding CIP items that needed to get worked on. And until we make significant progress to whittle those down, I don't think we have the luxury of not transferring from the general fund to cover some CIP. I look at the ballot measure and the sales tax as ways to help us kind of dig ourselves out of the hole that we're already in. But right now I want to get the CIP projects that need to get done as quickly as possible. And if we've got a surplus of general fund dollars, then we can cover some of those CIP items with the general fund.
ending unreserved fund balance, it's, as you can see back in, it's been higher, but it's something there that gets us through an event like the Marshall Fire and unforeseen expenses that we might have. So try to keep that pretty steady.
So that's it for the general fund, unless you have any other questions.
Nope.
And with no other questions, we'll move on to CIP. Brandon's got to leave here in 45 minutes, so our thought was we will do his. You're good? All right, never mind. So, all right, revenues, directly from, the same percentages on sales tax, vehicle use, building use. There is some grant revenue, both here in 2025 in that estimate. You can see, we're estimating about $2 million. The GOCO grant, the Rock Creek pedestrian grant, comp plan, the Sagamore asphalt, and then the RTD signal grant. And we believe we're going to get all those monies here in 2025. And then same thing in 2026. That is expected revenue, the biggest one being the McCaslin pad crossing. And you can see the other smaller ones that make up, still $600,000. The other thing in 2026 is that sale of assets of $1.5 million. That is the estimate to sell the properties now across the street. And that's kind of where that is at. So that's kind of where we're, projecting that to be and using that for projects. And then the other two are the transfers from the Marshall Fire Recovery Fund, all that money that's generated there, rather than move small projects into that fund. We've said from the start, all that money gets moved into here to kind of do projects that were, delayed or new projects to get back to where we were. And then that last line is the transfer from the general fund that matches what's the expense on the general fund side. So that's the revenues in CIP.
Jeff, I know we've asked this before. I don't remember the timeline, but do we have a rough estimate of what year FEMA might reimburse us? Because we're 4 years now and counting since the fire and.
Never.
Yeah, they're literally dismantling FEMA right now, so I just.
I know Allison's working on those with Brooke we're really talking about maybe trying to just close all those out this year. There's some thought of, do we go back through the reconciliation process with them, which would be slower. They'd look at everything then, so anything that didn't specifically go through the rules, they could kick out. So we've had, discussions internally of maybe let's go ahead and finalize these. And so hopefully, I don't know if Allison's heard anything back yet, but hopefully here by the end of the year, we may be able to have an idea of, all right, we're closing these out, or give us an idea of where we think we're going to get that money and how much.
I could say something
Oh, there
really
she
quick
is.
if that's helpful. Hi, Allison James, Disaster Preparedness and Recovery Manager. Because of the ceilings on some of our projects being under $1 million, we had to wait to submit for reimbursement until all projects were finished. All of our projects are now finished as of this summer. So we've submitted a closeout for 17 projects now, which, believe it or not, it was a little bit of a lift. So once that closeout goes through, we've already received some funding, and we're hoping that we'll receive more soon now that all of those projects are closed out. And they don't reimburse until those small projects are closed and all the the work is complete. And so if you recall, we kind of waited on the asphalt to be done this year, just because we wanted the bulk of the construction completed this year before we worked on the asphalt, so it wouldn't be damaged. And I think we also closed out our irrigation project because, you know, we finished those parks and then we still had some irrigation to do here and there. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Allison. And just to let you guys know, I did look up the amounts we have outstanding from those projects, and it's about $2.3 million. But that's not just all general fund, so it's about $650,000 for the general fund, about $1 million for CIP, about $500,000 for water, and then smaller ones for SMID, open space, landscape, sewer, and storm. So that kind of gives you a magnitude of if we got everything that we've put on our books as a receivable, we'd get about $2.3 million between all the funds. The two big ones being, the $642,000 in the general fund and about a little bit over $1 million in the CIP fund.
I have a question, especially now that I know Allison's on the call. So we were talking about this the other night. If down the road there is any kind of settlement and funds do come to the town, what is the policy for what? I think everything we did is over what FEMA. What is the policy for like FEMA clawing back, or if, whatever we receive versus what we've spent, like what is the expectation for that?
What we did is we included our FEMA PA obligated amounts in that information request. And so we excluded those amounts from that process. And if FEMA wanted to claw that back, they would have to do that from the other organization.
Does that help, or did you have follow-up?
It's probably a better question for an exec session at the appropriate time.
I mean, like in the 2013 floods, did FEMA come back and try to recoup?
Yeah, I guess that's what I was just trying to understand. Like, what is what is the process if it's over? Like what?
I mean, our expenses are well over what FEMA's reimbursing us for. So I think we have a good argument to say, even if we did get a settlement, that our costs exceed what they've reimbursed us for.
There's no double recovery here.
Yeah.
Even best case scenario.
Hey, Jeff, before you leave the revenue side of this, on the interest line, all the money that we bonded for and is basically not getting spent as fast as we wanted, where's the interest flowing for that in the budget?
You'll see that in the next fund, which is the
Okay.
CIP 2025 fund.
Okay, so that the interest for that stays in that other enterprise?
It has to stay with that
Got it.
project or with those, with that fund where that revenue's being paid.
Yeah, no problem. I know that, with, two different projects that we sort of have deferred to 26, there's, $5 or $6 million that we didn't spend this year. So incremental interest. Wanted to make sure we got that somewhere.
Yep.
Thanks.
So that's CIP revenues. So then we'll start with the projects, and Brandon is up first.
Hello again. Yeah, just a few highlights. So the first project is the McCaslin Ped Crossing. That project's 83% grant funded, as Jeff mentioned. We actually have a design RFP on the street for that project now, and plan to present that to council at the 9/22 meeting, and complete construction early next year for that Ped Crossing of McCaslin. Of our share, the 17%, we're actually pursuing additional revenue from Boulder County, from the Boulder County transportation tax. So we could get up to $60,000 more dollars, which would reduce our match by half. So if that money doesn't come next year, Boulder County will give it to us the following year, just depending on how their budgets work. The park, sorry, I skipped the first one, the Public Works Maintenance and Operation Building, so that's moving forward this year. We've had some delays due to Excel primarily, but we're hoping to break ground very soon, so which could shift our 2025 estimate and some cost into 2026, but the overall budget remains the same, roughly $5 million. That's the new capital line items. Jumping to maintenance capital. So our street replacement program, that $500,000 is much lower than we've done in years past, in large part due to the CIP 2025 sales tax projects, which we'll touch on later. But that $500,000 includes 2 projects. It includes repaving Honey Creek Lane. So we plan to do Honey Creek Lane at the same time we do Rock Creek Parkway from Indiana to Colton, and also Rock Creek Parkway from Indiana to 88th, and then Honey Creek to Colton. So that $250,000 for Honey Creek Lane would be a mill and overlay of that road, which is starting to have some structural issues. We actually already have design for that project, so we're just updating that design from 2021. The other $250,000 is for alleys. So due to some budget constraints, we don't have in here paving Fifth Avenue or paving additional alleys in the next couple of years to make the budget balanced. I did send council a memo a couple digests ago, which shows a proposed application we would like to do to the alleys, which basically includes 3 inches of millings and a wrap treatment to harden the alleys. They do that on a lot of mine roads in Colorado, and I've actually visited a few of those roads, and it's holding up pretty well. I think it could easily buy us 5 years on those roads. It would make them a hard surface, so we wouldn't worry about mud as much and having to bring additional millings in. We could have some potholes we'd have to fix just like any road, but it should be a much more structurally stable surface. It doesn't address the drainage issues that it does when we pave the alleys, but it would be a gap fill while we get budget in line to pave Fifth Avenue and the alleys. Street maintenance is, I think that's concrete repairs and some work in downtown primarily in that street maintenance line item for that $400,000. Also crack seal and mastic, which we do annually. We do a lot of crack sealing in-house, but mastic we subcontract out because we don't have that equipment. Street sealing, slurry seals. So historically we've been doing reclamite treatments the last 2 years. We don't have reclamite in the budget for 2026. We had it in there initially, but had to cut that. What we are proposing is a street seal on Rock Creek Circle. We tried to reclamite that street last year, and due to the compaction of that road, it didn't absorb the reclamite treatment like all the other roads in town had. So we're proposing a slurry seal on Rock Creek Circle to renew that street and really renew the useful life of that roadway, similar to what we did on McCaslin 3 years ago. And that's kind of it for the big items. Any questions?
Okay, thanks, Brennan.
So for Parks and Recreation, capital, we're going to tag team this, Brandon and I. Projects that we have to highlight in 2026, you'll see the community park playground in there. That's probably the biggest increase. This project is being split partially, a little bit more than half in 2025 is coming out of the bond, and then the second half in 2026 is coming out of the CIP. And that project is moving forward, still online and on schedule to be completed before next summer. So I can move down to maintenance capital unless there's questions on any of the other. Most of those are pretty static.
Sorry, I had a question on the xeriscaping projects and design. What are you envisioning for that next year?
So we just have 100K in there, and that's a pretty small amount. We're keeping that reserved for any grant projects that we might get. So we'll have a match with those, as well as just general maintenance. We continue to try and reduce our juniper plantings and some other things like that. So as we do smaller patches of those, that's what this 100K will fund. It doesn't really take into account any large projects.
The one thing I will bring up is the community park playground. As we try to fit everything in, you'll see that the design of this and kind of the first part of this is in the CIP 2025. And then the finishing is in 2026 on this side. So it was just one of those things that we had to do to kind of balance the budget. Not that we like to do that, but that's the way it worked out. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understands that that's only a portion of it. You'll see the 2025 side of that when we get to the 2025 CIP project side.
And Leslie, I know ACES has been asking for years to do some kind of larger turf analysis to figure out how can the town reduce the amount of turf, the acreage of turf that we have to reduce water usage and maintenance costs and things like that. And when, do you have a crystal ball and when we think we might be able to get around to doing that kind of study or analysis to figure out where can we reduce some of the turf?
We're working on the crystal ball. So thanks to our fabulous grants manager, we are working on, we received a grant to help put together a plan. So a lot of that is going to involve some public engagement, identification of what is non-functional turf, making sure everybody's aware of how that's being evaluated, that you all have a chance to weigh in on that and then set priorities for that. So it is a trend in all communities these days to put together some of those plans, and it will involve a lot of education as well. So I can't remember what our timeline is for that.
We're in phase 2. It will continue through the end of this year and a bit into next year.
Great, thank you.
And we try to, when we do a project like the Rock Creek repaving or reconstruction we did, we got rid of all that non-functioning turf and zero-scaped that. So we try to do that with projects. We had $500,000, was it $500,000 in here? At one point for the medians on Rock Creek Parkway to go with next year's project, but we just couldn't fund it. So that got struck, but we do try to include zero-scaping
Just
with our projects.
for any members of the public listening in, non-functioning turf is not taking turf out of Purple Park per se. It's
Correct. No, it's places like medians and places like that. Yeah.
parks are not going to be impacted by this. It's the areas out of sight, out of mind.
Hey, can I go back to the xeriscaping line? Obviously we're going to do Rock Creek Parkway next year, and there's that whole swath of the middle of Rock Creek Parkway. And I know we've bifurcated the xeriscaping from the roadway project. What is the plan to redo the landscaping in the median for the for the Indiana to 88th Street chunk of Rock Creek Parkway?
It's a good question. It is something that we're actively looking for grant funding for. There are some things we can do intermittently. Obviously, we want to get the road project done and get in there and reduce the irrigation as much as possible. So we may see turf pretty much just going fallow for a year until we can locate some funding for that. There might be some methods where we can go in there and just replace it with rock until we have funding to actually go in and re-landscape and redo the irrigation based on that.
Okay, thanks, because that answered the other question, because the fear that I had is that if we didn't do the xeriscaping, we'd just be pouring a whole bunch of water all over our brand new street and, sort of perpetuate the historical issue. But it sounds like you've got an alternative plan short of just, turn off the sprinklers. That's fine by me.
And I think the answer is no to this, but I'll ask anyway. Are there any opportunities to have like a community volunteer work project to de-landscape the median?
There is an opportunity. One, medians are not a great place to put volunteers.
I get that. That's why.
But what about veterans?
It also is probably more about sourcing the plant material, I mean, there is labor involved, and we can look at that, but the larger item is really the redoing the irrigation is a huge expense, and sourcing the plant material.
Okay, thanks.
I'm sure you're already tracking this, but as soon as it starts to die, people are going to say things about it. So some signage or communication that we did it on purpose and that we're not just not taking care of it. So, yeah.
How much is the kind of rough budget to Xeriscape from Indiana to 88th that we don't have in the budget?
I don't know, Brandon, you might jump in here. It's
We had $500,000.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we spent roughly $500,000 on Rock Creek Parkway section from Wiggins to Indiana. I think this median's a little smaller, but that'd probably be a good budget estimate.
Okay.
Yeah, can we just put rocks or something in the meantime? Just something, I've known rocks aren't super cheap, but it's,
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, as Leslie mentioned, like the median up at Rock Creek and McCaslin, we've actually let that brown and haven't received complaints. Have we? Have you?
I've not received any complaints to date, other than one complaint about the rock wall, the decorative rock wall that we removed from there. There is a cost for putting the rocks in as well. It's not no cost, and then you have to go in and remove them if you put in the Xeriscape. So we'll continue to look for opportunities to get some funding and leverage that. And, if we have potential funding on other projects, maybe we can pick some of that up.
And that's the one we submitted a grant for. So we have an active grant application for that intersection median now. But unfortunately, some of that sustainability funding is not what it used to be from a grant prospect.
Just a thought, as we do sort of get to where we approve the contract for the roadway, can we at least look at how much we spent on the sort of deturfifying of the medians? Because we've done this twice now between Wiggins and Indiana, and then the chunk from Honey Creek down to Bell Flatirons. They're relatively different in terms of what we did, but the net benefit has been great. We got rid of a bunch of turf, because I think there's a sliding scale here of what we invest. What we did on the upper half of Rock Creek, $500,000, it looks amazing, but we don't necessarily have to do the super expensive version. We could probably do the cheaper version as well. More rocks, less plants, and that may help us get over the funding hump here too. I mean, I love that, the upper part looks great, but, I get the cost issue makes it challenging to do it. And I'd rather get it done, in conjunction with the roadway project, so we don't have to wait, 6, 12, 18 months, if we can.
what about just doing like flagstone? Like we've got a little bit of flagstone and then it goes to turf and bushes.
The flagstone is actually very expensive because it's manual labor to put that in.
Got it.
Yeah. But good idea. Keep coming up with them. Keep thinking. I'll go ahead and move on to the maintenance capital if everybody's okay with that. No major changes. We have money in there for fence maintenance. That's town-owned fence, both repair and staining of that. Vehicle replacement, we have a little bit in there. That's for repair of our skid steer in 2026. Community center building maintenance, you'll see 120 in there. That's for the reception desk project. So that's moving forward. Hopefully we'll have an update for you on that project before the end of the year. We have historic projects at $50K. That is the other half of the Miners Memorial bronze statue that shows up there. And then the cultural arts and events budget at $70. We do have some money in there for parking lot repairs. We were targeting that for North Pool. We might be able to utilize some of that for the sidewalk project, we're looking into that. And then I did want to point out the tennis court improvements are still sitting in the budget for 2027. That'll be a much needed project by that date.
And how many years have we been pushing that out? Like,
I've worked here 5.5 years, all 5.5 years.
so.
Before that even.
So just a note to the council for next year. No more kicking the can down the road. Yeah, we've been pushing that one out for a very long time.
Hey, Leslie, can we quickly talk about the CAPS piece of it? I was kind of under the impression, based on our last work session, that we might try to do something with CAPS to rebrand it so that we can avail ourselves of the SCFD funding, like call it, cultural sculpture acquisition or something. Because the way that it's branded, the way that it's tracked in the budget as capital sort of makes us ineligible for the SCFD funding.
I mean, we can look into that. Jeff, I don't know if you have any comments on that. I don't.
Yeah, we've moved some of those expenses in the past to operating already. So you're saying move all of this or what?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point, and I can resend the email, I think the whole issue for us to get SCFD funding is it won't replenish capital dollars, right? When we spend money on, events and everything else, the CAPS line item being in capital is just kind of goofy. I think we can all acknowledge that. It's a question of like, what is everybody else doing? Louisville, Lafayette, Broomfield, Boulder, they're not treating their cultural dollars as capital, and that way they're able to get the SCFD funding match. We can't, the way that we have it structured here. I'm happy to get a meeting set up with some of the SCFD people on how to do this, because we've now been funding this for the last 6 or 7 years, and we've never been able to get this SCFD money, which is taxpayer funded. And if it's really just simple, like moving something around on a spreadsheet, then it's really, at our best interest to do that.
So you're saying put it underneath the Parks Department as a line rather than here?
I mean, I can't solve this right now, but let's take this offline and I'll resend what I'd sent in terms of where it could go, how it could be represented. I know JG did this in North Glen. She's probably got some expertise here that I don't. So I just, whatever we do when we approve this budget, I want to make sure we're 100% eligible for SCFD funding, which we were not last year. And the way that is structured right now, we wouldn't be going forward either.
Yeah, so you're suggesting moving the CAPS programming from CIP to the general fund within parks or wherever it goes, and that'll make us potentially
yes,
able to qualify for the grants. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, this doesn't seem like it's a capital project, and
right. And I think just by moving it, from one tab to the other, magically makes us eligible because it's not quote unquote treated as capital. Like SCFD doesn't fund capital.
Yeah, I mean, we can look into doing that and making sure it fits within the budget. We can definitely try to move that over.
And if it's a move over, rebrand, or whatever, let's just make sure we've got that set up. And Jeff, also separate down, I know you sent me that spreadsheet. It's actually different from the one that's on the screen. So if you or Valerie can send me the latest and greatest, whenever you get a chance.
Yeah, that's the one. This is the one we've updated. So that's the one that went out with the supplemental. And we've updated this. So yeah, I can send this out to you.
Yeah, because I was looking at what you've got on the screen has got two other tabs, on between CIP and CTF, which the one that you sent us did not. So either way. Only because the Zoom's a lot blurry, and I thought it was me, but it's apparently not. So thanks.
Yep.
Alexis, do you want to come up and just go through some of the sustainability items?
Hello, everyone. So I've got kind of 4 buckets represented in a very long comment there in the sustainability enhancement section. The first one is related to what Leslie has already kind of talked about with the xeriscaping. So with that new kind of policy work we're doing, looking at non-essential turf, looking at what a roadmap could look like for the future, we have $100,000 included in there. Just given the cost of turf removal and irrigation upgrades, it's pretty expensive, and PROS already has a lot of projects related to that. So this would help us to implement that roadmap kind of across the next 5 years once we actually have that document in place and do that engagement. Also included in there is an ACES recommended decarbonization plan of $50,000. So we've had a lot of discussions with new facilities looking at the sustainability pieces, but a decarbonization plan would help us look at our existing facilities, understand both the challenges and the opportunities. So it would help us look at the equipment we already have, what our actual costs would be to replace them, and then what our return on investment would be. It can help us do some of those calculations looking at kind of those dollars across time. Another $50,000 we have in there is just for general sustainability grant matches. As you all have kind of seen, sustainability sometimes has some large price tags associated to it that probably aren't going to be able to come out of the general fund. So just having a general grant allows us to pursue various grants as they come up. And then the $32,500 is $26,000 essentially is a grant that we typically get from Boulder County. So that's actually revenue that we need to represent in here somewhere. We haven't in the past, but given that we typically get that every year, we moved our $6,500 match and then the grant revenue, which is about $26,000 into the CIP budget.
Any questions? Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
So the rest of these items are just annual, either upgrades. We have to replace servers. I think it's every 5 years we're doing that. We've got the Granicus server. What was the other one? TriCaster, which is for our broadcasts of our meetings. We're always upgrading audio and visual in this room just to try to improve the experience for people watching online. And then the landscape code update, and I think the energy code those have connected grant revenue to those too. Get those done in 2026. Any questions on?
I don't know if this is the right line item for it in server replacement or whatnot, but just kind of thinking about like technological enhancements for the town, both internally and then also externally for communicating with the public. But given kind of the rapid growth of AI, seems like there's opportunities for the town to start using some sort of service that would be able to give residents questions when they're asking. So it kind of reduces staff time. If people are looking for planning and building department documents, they could, basically use a ChatGPT that service that is, hooked into all of the documents that we have. And then similarly, just helping staff do its job. So to the extent that there are some services out there that we could potentially try out, I'm supportive of us leveraging those technologies.
Yeah.
We're already looking at some of those things.
Yeah, we're looking at, and we've connected with a couple of companies this year that talked to us about those type of services. So it's something we can look into. Yep.
Okay, great.
As far as our fund balance, Valerian. So you can see when we get out to 2030, it's pretty healthy balance. So we'd be able to do more projects in the outer years is the hope there. CIP 2025?
Yep, move on to the next one. Here they come.
Go over revenues.
We've been kind of dressed alike today.
So this first piece is the project side, and you can see there's the, bond proceeds for this year, and then the out years, we get sales tax in here. The reason that is we're building for the first year kind of a reserve in the debt service fund, and that's what we told the, rating agencies we would do in case we did have a downturn. And so that's why you won't see revenue in here in 2026, but you see revenue in 2027 and beyond is for that piece. So that's that revenue piece. There's the interest piece based off of, fund balances at the end of each year. And then the bond proceeds that we got this year. And that is the revenue piece for at least the project side of the new bond measure.
Projects.
So start with the public works projects, all street projects. So we have 3 that we plan to do next year. First is Indiana at 88th. Initially, we had that in this year's budget, but had some delays. Now recommending that for next year. Our goal would be to complete both Rock Creek projects, Indiana to 88th and Honey Creek to Colton simultaneously. So design for both of those projects has been awarded and is underway. Our goal is actually to finish design in October for both those projects and present it to council, say the first meeting in November. We wouldn't be ready to bid it in November because there's really no benefit to bidding it that early because we can't start until March, April timeframe, but we would be ready to bid it in February of next year. As I mentioned earlier, we would combine the Honey Creek project with this just to hopefully get some economies of scale, and they're all in the same area. Haven't decided yet if it would make sense to bid Indiana Street with these projects. We're going to talk to some contractors to get their thoughts on that. It would make it a more appealing project due to the size, but obviously there's some separation there, and we worry somewhat about schedules because we don't want to, with both projects being around school access, we don't want to be working there when school starts in August. But the Indiana Street project is under design. Council approved that on Monday. We got the contract assigned yesterday. Thank you, Mark. And they're letting the surveyor go out now, so they've already authorized the surveyor. So we'll have that design done this year as well on Indiana Street. All 3 of these projects are full reconstruct, and we're confident they can be completed in the construction season next year. Jump into parks projects, unless there's a question on the public works projects.
I'll just say, generally speaking, I like the idea of leveraging economies of scale. So if staff's recommendation is to try to bid these out together, and we think that that's going to be the way that we're going to get the best pricing, I think that makes sense. But if you don't, and you think that because they're just separated and it doesn't make sense, I'm also fine segmenting them out. And staff's obviously aware that both of them impact school access. So that's a challenge, but we can work through that.
Okay. Yeah. The big one for Parks and Rec are the pool projects. So obviously the budget's a living document. The 2025 estimate for North Pool will be moved to 26 and 27 as we were delaying that pool project to the 26-27 project due to some schedule delays that could impact pool opening. Staff's also currently recommending doing the South Pool in the same time period of 26-27. I know we have a agenda item for the work session to talk about that. We're working on a memo for council, and we'll discuss that in the work session. And if that changes, we're flexible and can move that to 27-28. Anything you want to add on the pools?
So looking at so North Pool, so we budgeted 2.3 in 2025. So the way that this looks, we're moving the 2.3 that we budgeted for in 2025 because we're not spending it this year. Total project is more like $5 million, right? So it's not just that this project costs just in the 2.5 range, right?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear that I was understanding the way we were looking at this.
Go for it.
As Jeff mentioned, the other portion of the community park playground is reflected in the 2025 estimate. That is going to be expenses as they order equipment this year. And then the CIP expenses will kick in for installation in 2026. And then the community center project, this is for the structural and drainage project that we've pushed a little bit and finally going to be able to do some corrective action on that building as it continues to settle and move and shift due to the expansive soils and the amount of drainage that we're getting through that parcel.
I had Brandon and his staff look at this and let me know if we thought we could delay, because we were talking about doing it this year, and he felt comfortable that the structure was fine, but we're going to move ahead with it if the council's okay next year, because it's, in my opinion, it's getting worse. So I think we need to get this project done.
Just a quick question, and my memory might be taxed here, but I thought we were talking about $1 million for the community center. Is it up 50%, or is it just that the scope has changed?
So the engineer's estimate in 23 or 24, they took it to about 50% design, was right around 1.1 million and some change. So adding inflation to that, we were a little conservative and increased it to 1.5. We also don't have 100% design drawings. So we actually have a scoping meeting with the consultant next week to finalize that scope and get them kicked off, and we'll bring that contract to council hopefully in October for that project.
Okay, and I'm just looking at the budget book. I mean, this is really, I mean, it's not stuff that people can see, right? It's not like what's in the budget book is pretty generic, but the ADA stuff is separate and above the 1.5. This is really just drainage and other things to sort of salvage and protect the building, right?
That's correct. It also will help collect some of that surface water that's always on the parking lot. We're always having concerns with safety, especially in the winter months with the amount of water and melting snow that drain across that parking lot.
Okay.
And just one example, Neil, the engineer's estimate previously had only redoing the asphalt where we were open cutting to put in storm drainage, where as we think it makes the most sense to resurface the entire parking lot so it's not a patchwork, so that would increase cost. So things like that went into the 1.5 million estimate versus the 1.1 initial estimate.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So resurfacing the entire parking lot is part of this as well?
That's what we're planning to do now. Initially, it was just storm. So there's a lot of storm drain lines that will go in around the building to get that flow away from the building. So we're basically open cutting both the east and west side of the building. But to make it more uniform, that parking lot's not in great shape anyway. We'll go ahead and resurface the entire lot as part of the project.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It just, the parking lot wasn't even mentioned in the board book or the budget book, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
So that is the 2025. That's the 2025 CIP projects. Anybody have any questions? Okay, we'll move on to the
I have one quick thing. If
Yeah.
we could just go back up to talking about the pool. So, right now, and I think we're going to talk about this on Monday night in terms of the work session agenda and staggering or not staggering. But currently, we're discussing, we were planning on doing the North Pool renovation this year. We're looking at delaying it to 26, 27. And right now, the staff recommendation is to do both pools in the same 26 to 27 year. And so we're budgeting for that, and that's great, but we'll have a discussion on Monday as to whether or not that's the time frame that the
That's
council
correct.
wants to proceed on.
And then we'll, depending on that discussion, if there's changes, we'll have those reflected in the budget.
Okay.
Something that's stands out to me is by the end of '27, all the bond proceeds will have been spent. And then with great projects being done, so.
All right.
Okay.
Good job, team.
Onto the debt piece of the bond issue. This is kind of, just the paying back of that, $17 million in bond proceeds that we got. So as you can see, the sales tax is coming in this year and will continue, but you'll see a drop in '27. And that's because we started moving some of that to the capital side because we have enough to pay the debt. And we continue to keep that, $1.2 million in debt service reserve that would, if something were to happen, we could dip into to make the debt payments for a year if we needed to. This was one of those things that we did because you can do a debt service reserve and pay it up front, but that then sits with the trustee, whereas now by it sitting here, we'll be able to collect the interest earnings on this. So that's one of the reasons we did it and why you'll see a larger interest earnings in a debt service budget than, most is because we're kind of keeping that reserve in-house rather than kind of buying a debt service reserve fund up front. So that's the debt side of the new CIP. Questions? Okay. Moving right along to CTF. This is all lottery money. Mayor, do we want to take a break for 5?
I'm going to take a break.
All right.
Say 5.
I was gonna say.
That's okay.
I have one of these, yes. It's my fault. I don't have Apple products. Oh, yeah. So they like defeat me constantly. Because I can send you the patch. So Nadine's helping. Oh. I just was like, I sat down, I'm like, I can't get it to work right now in the meeting. So I appreciate everybody helping me in my IT fail. When I was in the Army, that was my job. I would set up like network communication systems like out in the field where there was nothing. You know, like when there's a war, you have to have comms, so you go out there and you like, and you would never know it because it's another when things break, I'm like, TV doesn't work, so I just didn't turn it on for until someone came and told me to fix the dual. For free, I don't care about that for 20 minutes. No, it doesn't work. That's over, it's over now, that's. Yeah, I think we only got. My boyfriend, we didn't knowing that. We're not broken, yeah. That's why I hear it weird, yeah, and we don't want to put the phone on it because.
Okay. Go ahead and move on to Conservation Trust.
So this revenue is directly off of lottery revenues, so it has to be used for, parks type projects, and that's why we use it for pools and trees is what we've always done in the past. So this, revenue source, as you can see in 23 was up, 24 was about 150. We kind of estimate we're at 150, but if Powerball or Mega Millions hits the billion like it did, this next payment we'll see is probably going to be a little bit higher. But as you can see, we're already trending a little bit under in our first two payments to get to the 150, but that's kind of why we leave it there and then use it for pool and tree enhancements on those. Any questions on CTF?
And just to point out, in the CIP, there's 230,000 for tree enhancements as well. So we're pretty aggressive on tree replacement in town, and so it's in multiple funds.
Jeff, just a question, if we do renovate the pools as soon as, next year, so at the start of the 27 pool season, are we still going to need 75K to be going into pool improvements every single year, or can that money be shifted somewhere else? It's a little surprising to me to be, spending money on maintenance a year after we finished a renovation of $5+ million.
Leslie's on her way up.
Yeah, this is, no. Okay, there we go. These dollars are in there as a kind of emergency fund. The pools hopefully will not need this, but there's always that possibility that we'll have a problem with a heater or a filter or something that needs some kind of extensive repair work. So in general, this is typically there just as in case. So we have the funding there if we need to make those repairs. We pretty much have hit about 60K this year because we had to do some emergency repairs and interim measures to keep the pools up and running, so.
Yeah, no issues, and I get it for 26, but 27 onwards, I don't want to hold 75K back for a brand new pair of pools, and I'd rather see that, sort of in a trees bucket or something else, because, in 27, 28, 29, we're going to go back to the guys that renovated the pools for any emergency repairs if anything fails that fast.
I was going to ask what the warranty period is anticipated for the...
There will be typically a 2-year warranty period, longer on some of the mechanical equipment. may also want to consider that we now have a fountain in downtown, so we have another aquatic facility. There are some potential improvements we could do down there, and we could look at that as a funding source for those in the future.
I think that's a good point, though. So we'll discuss that for the out years, 27 beyond, and see about making some adjustments.
I mean, I'm all for having a safety bucket just in case, but I agree with Neil that it probably doesn't need to be 75. Maybe if 50 feels right, we'll start there and move 25 into trees or something.
Can we use the Conservation Trust tree line item to help supplement any of the xeriscaping deficits that we have along Rock Creek Parkway?
I don't think so.
I don't know what the legal implications are on that with the funding, so.
All right, but we've got $100K in the CIP for trees, so, lower that and then increase the xeriscaping on the CIP.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. Yep. We'll take a look at all these suggestions, and at our second budget, we'll review those with the council. Okay, open space.
I'll let Jeff get caught up here.
Revenue-wise, it's just like everything else. There are some grants that Leslie and Brooke have, gotten, and that's what's budgeted as estimate in 2025 as well as out years. And then the big other revenue next year is for the Mile High Flood District portion reimbursement for the land acquisition that will happen in 2026.
And as Jeff mentioned, that grant funding is both the federal hazard mitigation funding that's coming in and the Boulder County strategic fuels mitigation. So that's all wildfire mitigation money that's coming in that revenue line. You also see that reflected in the expense line, which is, you'll see that's the largest change. We do have a small change in part-time dollars as we're bringing on a seasonal ranger. Everything else remains fairly static until you get down to that fuels mitigation and debris removal line at the bottom, which is the expense part of that grant revenue that's coming in.
And there again, that just reminded me as I talked about auditing services, this will be a new federal program. So we will have an additional program that has to be audited. So our auditing fees will go up as these come on board. So just to make everybody aware, we need to remember that.
Any questions? Debt service.
So open space debt, we will pay off, as we talked about earlier, in 2026, we will pay off the 2015 bonds, and then we will start making principal payments on the 2020 series. We've only been making interest only on that, and then we will start making principal payments in 2027 on that other outstanding open space debt. And again, that revenue is sales tax, sales and use tax. We put as much in here as we need. The rest of that then is moved to the open space capital side, and that's kind of why this is split that way as well. So that's the open space debt service.
Remind me, when are we done paying off Coyote Ridge?
2040, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, 2040 community center in 2034, and then the new CIP debt and the sewer debt will be 2049.
Thank you.
Trash, this is just the straight pass-through based on monthly rates of what everybody chooses on bin size. And then we get that bill from Republic, and then that gets, we pay that, and then we bill out to the customers that same exact amount. So that's the trash and recycling.
So we don't have any change in here projecting Rock Creek coming online?
We didn't include that in the 5-year budget.
And so that's scheduled to come online in 28?
28, I believe.
So I don't know if we necessarily need to change it for now, but maybe
Something to
next
note.
year.
Yeah.
As we get closer to that deadline, let's start projecting what the costs are going to be to the best extent possible.
So yeah, we'll note that for future years. And then also, staff's looking at an admin fee as well. Because in 28, if we take on more accounts, we might need a part-time staff or another staff to help support that.
And Matt, just more of a general question, the staff that you're anticipating are part-time, are those part-time staff only working on that one thing, or the same individual is working on 2 separate projects part-time that makes them full-time? Is that, am I asking that clearly?
Yeah.
I know how I'm asking in my head.
We don't have an answer. I guess right now we're looking into what makes the most sense. So it could be a full-time person that works on multiple trash and utility billing, or so. Yeah, it's something we need to work on, flesh out.
Thank you.
Marshall Fire Recovery. This again is the 0.16 sales tax that runs through 2032. This was the old SMID sales tax that got repurposed after the fire. This is, again, transferred to the CIP fund for recovery projects and delayed projects. What's that?
Did this have a 10-year sunset?
Yeah, this goes out
Yeah.
through 2032.
Yeah.
And then it's over. Yep. All right. Class 1 landscape. So what we have in here now is based off of the rate study. So you can see we've got the 15% rate, then 3.5, 5, 2, and 5. And that keeps us in the fund balance. You know, I know there was talk that night of, dropping that to, 10 or something like that, and then increasing those out years. So it's pretty easy. We can just change that number and it'll change it. But we left it here as it was with the rate study to have a discussion today on what we want to do with the revenue.
You have a recommendation?
I mean, looking at it, what I think worked was 10, and then it was either 7, 5, 5, 5, or 10, 5, 5, 5, 5. I can't remember which one I played with, but those kind of worked to balance it, and kind of keep us in that, fund balance, not at the top end, but definitely closer to the bottom end. And again, some of these, as Leslie gets into the expenses, some of those out-year projects that we don't know when they're coming online and how much we're going to have will be additional expenses that aren't in here as of yet.
I think playing with a couple of scenarios would be helpful, because earlier in the today's conversation, we talked about some of the rate increases for some of the other funds, and those are in the 9% range. And so if we can bring the 15 down to something that's closer to consistent with the other rate increases, it's going to be a big hit for the town, residents in the town. So spreading it out over multiple years would be my preferred approach.
Jeff, just for the dollars and cents, because I know 15 does seem like a lot, but we also want to make sure that we're not insolvent in some of these funds and pulling where we shouldn't be. Isn't it like $5 or something, $4? I remember it's less than a cup of coffee, so the percentage seems high, but yeah. Yeah, it's just making sure that, because it seems to me, at least from our finance committee discussions like this, and like the system development fees that, again, marching toward a cliff, are because there wasn't an increase when there probably should have been. And so now there's these larger increases, but it's just correcting the problem to where we're not perpetuating the problem. So I get what you're saying. And I'm also just thinking, I don't want to keep kicking the can on not correcting the issue, because it's not going to correct itself, and then it just makes it more painful later.
Supportive of making sure that we are being fiscally responsible and our funds don't go off a cliff. Just sensitive to all the other things we talked about earlier today and what the compounding effect that has on rates across town.
And it's education. I mean, it's education from the moment we know it's going to happen to when it actually is felt. So I think.
Do you want Valerie to play with numbers here, or do we want to leave it?
Well, I was going to suggest is what we could do is for the next budget meeting, we could go back and make some adjustments and bring those forward at the next meeting and review those with the council, if you're okay with that. Unless you already know what you want, and then it's easy just to plug it in as well.
I don't know that I have an idea of what I want. I agree with Stephanie that making sure that whatever the number is keeps us in the black rather than in the red in any given year. But if there are options to reduce the first year number to something a little bit less and spread that out over the out years, that would be my preference.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to throw my words in here, I kind of agree with Mike. I mean, if 9% gets us there and we keep it to single digits this year, and then keep it 8% next year and down. I mean, the main thing is, and I do agree with on a cup of coffee basis. Yeah, maybe it's a cup of coffee every month for just the landscape fee. But then when, as Mike alluded to, when you aggregate that with all the other increases, it'd be good to have the total estimated household increase across all our fees. Just in one place, so that we can sort of talk about the aggregate hit to the standard home across all these funds. And I fully agree. I mean, these are things that we should have done a long time ago, but at the same time, just because of bad decisions at past boards, I don't want to hit our residents up with massive sticker shock all at once if we can spread it out over a couple of years.
Okay. Cool.
Expenses.
The expense portion of Class 1 landscape is pretty straightforward. This is reflective of the money that we moved from general fund into Class 1. You'll see that movement, as well as an increase for taking on the plaza in downtown. Parcel K, there's quite a bit of landscaping there. We took our best shot at estimate for that. We may need to adjust that in out years, but we'll see how that works out. And also the parks that are transferring from being paid out of general fund into Class 1. So
was it about $250,000 that we were transferring between these three items from the general fund to make the landscape balance?
Yep.
And so that's what we're adjusting now to make the landscape fund self-sufficient? Okay.
I thought we captured some of the downtown water fountain in the expenses, in the general fund expenses. Are we also capturing some of it here?
No, this is just the landscape. So all the landscape that is surrounding the plaza, there's quite a few landscape beds, and all the way down the promenade that goes down to Superior Commons Park, all that landscape is now being cared for by the town.
Okay, was that part of, because I guess when we approved that, I was under the impression the only thing we're gonna take on is now the fountain, but apparently it's also a bunch of landscaping now too.
it's the artificial turf, it's the stage, it's all the landscaping and all the snow removal on parcel K.
And that incremental amount, I can't read that. So, just, I'd like to know, what's the incremental amount for just downtown Plaza that we're taking now that's above and beyond the fountain? Because I think when we had the fountain conversation, it was estimated like 20, 30K per year. It gets us to stay open more days, great, fine. But if it's also, apparently 50,000, okay, so it's really, that decision to take over the fountain was really about $100,000 per year expense between the fountain operations and landscaping. Is that more accurate?
That's correct.
All right. Okay.
And then line 27, what is the administration fee?
That is the fee that Class 1, SMID, Water, Sewer, and Storm pay to the general fund for part of my time, part of Matt's time, all the staff time that works on those. It's how we divvy it up rather than breaking payroll into 37 different things. We put it here and then do the admin fee to spread those costs out to the other funds.
Great, thank you.
Yep. So there at the bottom, Valerie's got it, we're at 16%, So we'll play with those numbers up top. And kind of give you some options of what will keep us kind of in that, 15%, kind of in that middle of that 10 to 25% policy range, and give you kind of some, hey, if we take it to 9 in 2026, that's going to drop us probably below, the 10, but we can beef it back up and get it there by 27, 28 or something, and give you guys some options. All right, so that's Class 1. Next is the interchange district. So this revenue is just property tax now based on, the SMID area, which is a lot of the marketplace, and then Discovery Office. So that's where those revenues come from. Again, we had a debt piece that was paid off in 2024. That's why you saw a maintenance increase mill levy in 2025. And again, this has a service plan that we have to follow, but we have the ability to increase those mills based on what we need. And that's why we've got a $0.5 mil increase in 26 and 1 mil in 27 proposed right now to kind of keep this balanced for the out years. So that's what revenue is. And then there is the grant revenue on that Marshall and McCaslin bike and pedestrian signal improvements that we discussed earlier as well.
With the paying off the debt, there was an overall decrease in the property tax mill rate, correct?
Correct. This mill years ago was 35 mills. So it's decreased by over 30% since the town has taken it over. Thanks, Matt. Good call. And, we'd like to keep the operation size as low as we can, but it's aging infrastructure that, Brandon and Leslie have projects on that need to be done.
Hey, Jeff and Leslie, I want to go back, and I don't want to sidetrack this. I mean, when the board approved taking over the plaza, it was estimated at $40K per year, and what we're talking about is $100K per year, and that $40K, just looking at the August 11th, was inclusive of all things. And if we've got to go from 40 to 100K in just 1 year, in 1 month, I'd like to see the explanation on the why before we adopt the budget. I mean, if we're taking it up by 2.5x, there's got to be something we're doing that somebody wasn't doing. And, did someone hide the football on this one, and we got, a bait and switch issue? Not you guys, I'm talking about from the municipal district.
Yeah, we'll get that information for you and the rest of the council.
Because the memo is very specific about 40K and it's comprehensive on the list.
Okay. Brandon, do you have any comments on the 2 projects in here for next year?
Yeah, so the intersection project is grant funded 80%, I believe, through the EDA. So have design proposals coming in for that one next week, and we'll present that to the council in the first meeting in October. So the goal is to complete that project next year. That's adding the 5th lane at that intersection, 3 dedicated lefts, a through and a right. We'll also do pedestrian and bike improvements as part of that project. So we're really glad that's grant funded. And the traffic signal system upgrades, if you could hover over that, I believe it's for, so these are looking at the intersections that we are owned and controlled by CDOT, but we have an IGA to maintain those intersections. So we're looking at safety performance upgrades. So we've been implementing a lot of lead time pedestrian crossings. So when a pedestrian hits a button, the light doesn't change immediately, so the pedestrian can start walking, the car can see the pedestrian, things like that, but also upgrading signal equipment. A lot of that equipment's aging, and we're starting to have some functionality issues with it, so that's what those upgrades are for.
Since you're there, do you want to go over any of the other items under transportation?
No, I mean, when the traffic engineering services, we increased that. I think they have a note in there. It's based on our 5-year average, so we really don't know what's going to come up in those intersections with CDOT, but that's what that's for. Snow removal contract and materials, we assumed an inflationary increase. The maintenance of the traffic signals, we did have some expenses this year that won't carry over to next year, so we have some cost savings there. And then signage and striping, we do that every 2 years, and that's CDOT requirement because they measure retro reflectivity, which we actually have a piece of equipment. We go out there and see how reflective the striping is. So we do more of Marshall McCaslin than any other roads in town to meet that CDOT requirement. CDOT does give us money for this, but it falls short of what we spend, unfortunately. But I think the town made a decision years ago to maintain these roads and signals due to the importance to the town of this area. So.
Thanks. Any questions?
Brandon, I'm sure we've asked, but have we asked CDOT for more funding?
Yeah, we actually did get quite a bit more funding with our last IGA, and they pushed back a lot. This was actually before Alex and I worked on this together as he was retiring. So we showed him our cost, and we got...
We're at $36,000 right now.
Yeah, but what was it?
Like 24,
Yeah,
22. Yeah.
So we got a pretty substantial increase, and that's more than other municipalities are getting, but it still doesn't cover our full cost to do this.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for asking.
Yeah, and I think it's a 4-year IGA, 5-year. So we'll have a chance to renegotiate in 2027, I believe. It's a good question.
So that's it on SMID, unless you have any questions. We'll move to SURA. This is the property tax from the town center that the town collects, that then gets divvied up, based on the revenue share agreements with the developer and the metro districts. So it's all a percentage base of what revenue comes in, and that's all based on valuations. Again, on those preliminary numbers I got, this actually goes up as well, which is good, but it doesn't mean that it's all coming to the town. The town does get a little bit of this, because when this was implemented, we were at 7.93 because we had the mill levy credit. When the mill levy credit went away, the IGA says anytime your mill levy goes above what it was in 2013, you get to capture that. And so Boulder County's done it in past years, the school district does it, and as you can see here, we're estimating this year, at $176,000. The budget for next year is 205, so that's our portion of the increase over 9.43 mils to the 12.127. So that's kind of where that comes from. So that's why you see property tax reimbursements, depending on what the other entities that were part of the IGA, what their mill levy was in 2013 to what it is each year after that. So again, this is a straight pass-through other than that amount that comes to the town. Town collects it. Valerie does a nice big spreadsheet, sends it to the trustee, who then turns around and sends it out to all the entities.
And then, so there's property tax revenue that goes to Louisville Fire, Mountain View Fire, the school district, the county, and to us because of those reasons.
So that's downtown.
Where are we in terms of the total TIF reimbursement? So the TIF, I think, expires in 2038, right? And so it's up to $140 million, right? Which was like 105.
It's 108.
108, but then there's some sort of kicker that extends it to 140, something like that?
Well, it's the interest portion.
Okay.
So they get an interest piece, and that's the one thing that nobody's been able, Paul tried, I've tried to get them to say, what's the number, that we can all agree on? Is it 6%? Is it 8%? Is it 2%? I'm still trying to get that because that will then determine what our total is to say, hey, once we get to this number, we're done. So yes, I'm still trying to work on that, is trying to find the right person that can answer that question or come in and talk to the council and say, what can we agree on to update that IGA? Oh, thanks, Valerie.
And so the spreadsheet that we're looking at right now, does that show the total amount that's been paid on the TIF?
That it does.
35 million? Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Just a time check. We have the District 1 funds. We can continue to 4, or we could stop here and hit those at the second meeting, plus all the follow-up that we have. It's up to the council.
I would recommend we do them next time because Jim Widener, that knows the water side, is not here. I told him we won't get there. Or Brandon, we could almost do storm. Or do you want to wait for Christine on that one too? I mean, those are the only 3 that are left. I mean, there's water ops and capital. So there's, 6 funds to go through.
Yeah.
I think that and the follow-up we can get through next week without any problem.
Yeah, I need to get going here pretty soon, so.
Okay.
So,
But not that you need to call it for me.
Yeah.
But just so you
good
don't
with
think I'm
that.
being rude.
Sounds good. This is efficient, so,
Yeah, thank you, guys.
yeah.
Thanks to everybody, thank you.
and I'll just say thank you to all the staff for
Yeah,
the
100%.
months we've put into this, so. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right.
Thanks all.
See you next
Bye-bye.
time.
See you.
Thank you for driving.
Don't forget to take your mic off. I think